I was terrified the first time I walked into the UNC football team's locker room to teach yoga. I didn't have a sports medicine certification. I wasn't a strength coach. I had never played football, and I was about to teach some of the more elite athletes in college sports. But here's what happened. The most important lesson I've ever learned about teaching athletes came from a linebacker flopping on that locker room floor, asking me to forget everything I had prepared. That moment changed my entire approach to working with athletes. I'm Sage Rountree, and for over 20 years, I've been teaching yoga to athletes at every level, from recreational runners to Olympic competitors to Division I college teams. Today, I want to share the real story of how I started working with the UNC football program, because it completely changed how I think about teaching athletes. And I'm going to tell you the single most valuable insight about teaching athletes I've ever gained. By the end of this video, you'll understand why credentials matter less than you think, what actually gets you in the door with athletic programs, and how one moment of letting go can transform your entire teaching approach. This is the story I wish I had heard when I started teaching athletic populations. Let me set the scene. I'd been teaching yoga for several years and working as an endurance sports coach. I understood athletic training because I'd studied exercise physiology while coaching triathletes and runners, but I didn't have any official sports medicine certifications or specialized athletic training credentials. One day, I got a call. The UNC football team's strength coach had heard about my work with athletes and wanted to bring me in. My first thought wasn't excitement, it was terror, it was panic. I immediately thought about everything I didn't have. I didn't have an athletic training certification. I hadn't played college sports, and certainly not football. I didn't have a degree in exercise science or sports medicine. I have a PhD in English literature. I started mentally listing all the reasons I wasn't qualified. Then I had about 3 weeks to prepare before the first session. You know what I did? I went completely overboard trying to prove I belonged there. I researched football-specific movement patterns. I studied the biomechanics of different positions. I designed elaborate sequences targeting hip mobility for linebackers and shoulder stability for quarterbacks. I memorized anatomical terminology. I created detailed lesson plans showing exactly which muscles we would work and why. I was so determined to show them I understood their sport and their bodies as well as any sports medicine professional. So I walked into that locker room, and yes, I taught them in the locker room on the ratty carpet for years with my perfectly planned, biomechanically sound, sports-specific sequence ready to go. I had my cues memorized. I knew exactly what I was going to teach and why. I was ready to impress them with my expertise. The linebackers filed in. These are massive, powerful athletes. Some of them were headed to the NFL. And do you know what they did? They immediately flopped down on the locker room floor. One of them looked up at me from the carpet and said, "Coach Sage, can we just do breath exercises and shavasana?" My first thought was panic. I had prepared this elaborate football-specific sequence. I was ready to demonstrate my understanding of their biomechanics. I was going to show them complex movements designed specifically for football. And they just wanted to breathe and rest. For a split second, I worried they'd think I didn't know what I was doing, that they'd realize I wasn't qualified, that they'd report back to their coaches that the yoga teacher didn't have a real plan. But then I looked around that locker room and really saw these guys. These powerful men were lying on their backs, eyes closed, shoulders already starting to drop away from their ears. The tension was literally melting from their faces. And that's when it hit me. They didn't need another coach telling them how to optimize their bodies. They didn't need more analysis, more programming, more intensity. They sure didn't need someone impressing them with complex sequences and anatomical knowledge. They needed permission to let their guard down. They needed someone to help them remember they were human beings, not just athletic machines. So I let go of my entire plan. My beautiful, researched, biomechanically sound sequence went out the window. And we spent that entire session on the simplest practices imaginable. Breathing, just noticing the breath. Gentle movements that help them feel their bodies without performing. Restorative positions with whatever props we could find in the locker room, including the lockers themselves. And shavasana, complete, unconditional rest. No complex poses, no Sanskrit terminology, no detailed anatomical instruction, just simple practices that helped them reconnect with their bodies in a completely different way than anything else in their training. When we finished, these tough athletes thanked me with genuine gratitude. One said it was the first time his shoulders had relaxed in months. Another said he hadn't breathed that deeply in weeks. Another was sound asleep. And they asked when I was coming back. Here's what I realized. My value to athletes wasn't in my ability to be more technical, more complex, or more sophisticated than their other coaches. It's my ability to offer something completely different. It's my willingness to provide simplicity when everything else in their training is complex. It's permission to rest when everything else demands performance. Here's the thing. I didn't get that job because of credentials I had. I got it because I offered something their other coaches couldn't provide. The strength coach who called me understood that his athletes needed balance, not more intensity. He needed someone who could help them recover, not someone who would add to their physical load. My value wasn't in being more like a sports medicine professional. It was in being different from everyone else on their training team. And here's what happened over time. I became an essential part of their training program, not because I tried to fit into the existing structure of strength coaches and trainers, but because I offered a missing complementary piece. For over a decade, I've taught yoga to the UNC basketball team and their Hall of Fame coach, Roy Williams, who was my longtime private client. Roy never asked about my certifications. He asked, "Can you help me feel better?" He ended up writing the foreword to my book, Lifelong Yoga. In his dedication of Roy Williams Court in the Dean Smith Center, he called me out from the podium and said I had helped his golf game. And none of that happened because of my credentials. It happened because I understood that athletes don't need another technical expert. They need someone who helps them find balance and recover better. This lesson has played out again and again for me over 20 years. Athletes are surrounded by experts analyzing their bodies, optimizing their movements, programming their training. What they don't have is someone who says, "You don't have to achieve anything right now. You don't have to perform. You can just be here and breathe and rest." That locker room moment taught me that my job isn't to add more complexity to their lives. It's to provide the missing piece of simplicity, balance, and permission to be human. And here's what's beautiful. This applies to every athlete you teach, regardless of level. The recreational runner needs this permission as much as the professional athlete. The weekend warrior needs simple practices as much as the elite competitor. The principles are universal. If you want to learn how to position yourself to work with athletic programs, regardless of your certification background, I have created a free workshop called How to Double Your Income Teaching Yoga to Athletes. In it, I show you exactly how to approach teams and coaches, what to say about your qualifications, and how to demonstrate your value. The link is in the description below. You'll also find a link to join The Zone, my free community for yoga teachers, where we discuss these real-world teaching situations. Remember, you don't need a sports medicine certification to teach athletes. You don't need to be a strength coach or an athletic trainer. You need to understand that your value is in offering something completely different from everyone else on their training team. Sometimes the most powerful teaching comes from letting go of your plans and trusting what's simple. That linebacker asking for breath exercises in Shavasana, he wasn't being lazy. He was expressing a profound need that none of his other coaches were addressing. Your job is to hear what your athletes actually need, even when it's completely different from what you prepared to give them. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real talk about building a sustainable yoga teaching career. Drop a comment and tell me, what credential or qualification are you worried you don't have? Let's talk about it.